Joe Biden's campaign will soon raise its billionth dollar and has more than 2,000 staff across the country working to elect him president. But when he first ran for office nearly a half-century ago,
we had no money, we had no power, we knew no one in power. We didn't have a structured Democratic Party that was powerful. Joe was the first senator that he and I ever met.
Meet Valerie Biden Owens. She's not just the Democratic nominee's sister, but has managed every single one of his campaigns through his 2008 presidential bid.
I introduce you to my best friend in my life. She's been on my handlebars since she's been 3 years old, my sister Valerie Biden Owens.
I was his perpetual sidekick. From the time I was a little girl, wherever he went, he took me with him.
I think most Americans know what happens next. He's in Washington getting ready to set up his office, and there's a car accident. His wife tragically dies, his daughter. You become not just his sister, his campaign manager, but really his support system. There
was nothing heroic about that. It's exactly what my brothers would have done for me. The immediate time afterwards was like walking through molasses. And I watched my brother with such awe that he got up in the morning and put one foot in front of the other. But it wasn't, he was struggling for himself, but the greater thing was it was Bo and Hunt.
You were playing a leadership role in campaigns long before most women really were able to fill those roles.
I'm told I was the first woman, but I can't say that. You got to research it.
What have you seen in terms of how far women have come in politics to the point where your brother has chosen one to be his running mate, to be the vice president of the United States?
Well, I don't think it's a stretch for my brother. My brothers used to strong women. He said every successful man he knows has a strong woman in front of him, behind him, or beside him.
There was a lot of focus during the vice presidential vetting about the role that the family might play in that decision. Your brother, he doesn't hold grudges, as Jill wrote in her book, but she holds them for him.
Well, sometimes we have to do that. Look, my brother does not have a small bone in his body. I'm not making him a superhero. You know, he doesn't have to be any better. He's good enough as he is. You know, he's a regular guy. He's a decent man.
Your brother has talked about how he knew getting into this race, running against President Trump, was going to be difficult on the family. I'm wondering, they have a new ad today that asks, what happened to Joe?
Was totally different than he called it the.
As his sister, when you see those kinds of attacks on your brother, what does that make you think?
My brother, it's real simple. My brother stuttered. When he was a little boy, he couldn't string more than 3 words together at a time. But he was not going to be defined by a bully. And he built a backbone of steel, and he's not going to be defined by this bully.
I'll end it where we started. When you ran his first county council race in 1970, did you ever think he'd get to this point, potentially be president of the United States?
I didn't think in terms of president, truthfully, but I knew that he was going places. You know, there's no daylight between the private person and the public man. He says what he thinks.
Makes him fun to cover.
He makes him fun to cover. He is the antithesis of Donald Trump. They have zero in common. Trump thinks everything's about him. This election is about restoring the soul of America and the character of America. My brother is the vehicle.
And Mike joins me now from Joe Biden's hometown of Wilmington, Delaware. Mike, great sit-down interview there. Tell us more about this unique bond between Joe Biden and his sister Valerie. They seem so incredibly close.
Yeah, that's right, Allison. I learned a long time ago when you cover Joe Biden, you're covering the whole family. He peppers all of his speeches with expressions from his parents, from his grandparents. But we saw, of course, last night from Dr. Jill Biden, her speech, of course, the role that tragedy has played in their family life. And that has only deepened the connections that you see among siblings there. As I mentioned, Valerie is not just his sister, but has run all of his campaigns. You know, she says that he's the one who could focus on the big picture while he handles while she handles the management of their campaigns. But when his first wife died, she moved in with Joe. She helped raise Bo and Hunter, his 2 boys, after that accident. And then, of course, when he married Jill Biden, she was there to welcome her and the family. And she continues to be one of the closest advisors to this day. And as you saw, she's very defensive of her brother, as you would expect. She talked about Trump as a bully, and she talked about whenever he was being bullied as a child, she wanted to go and fight the people who were doing that to her brother. That's something that still is the case here years and years later.
Shifting away from Joe Biden to Kamala Harris, Mike, she's going to make history tonight. What do you expect to hear from her when she speaks to America?
Yeah, you really can't underscore enough the history-making moment that this will be tonight. The first woman of color accepting the nomination as vice president. And Senator Harris, as we understand, will reflect upon that, of course. But she has two jobs tonight. One is to introduce herself to the country. She'll talk about, her parents being immigrants to this country, her experience growing up as a woman of color, not just as a black woman, but as an Indian American woman as well. And she'll also do the role that, of course, a vice presidential running mate has to do, which is make clear the stakes of this election. And she'll talk about the critical importance of electing Joe Biden. She'll also talk about, I think inclusion is going to be a real theme of her speech. And Allison, we're also getting some excerpts from some of the other women who will be speaking tonight. Really, these speeches from powerful women have been, I think, one of the defining aspects of this Democratic convention. We'll hear from Hillary Clinton as well tonight. And in excerpts of the remarks that she'll deliver, she'll talk about the fact that for 4 years, people have been coming up to her and saying how they wish they had voted for her. And she says even worse, that they wish they had voted at all. She's going to underscore the importance of people voting and, of course, voting for Joe Biden. She'll also, and tell me if this sounds familiar, she'll say, I had hoped that Donald Trump would be a good president, but in the end, he is what he is. Something we've heard a few times this week, haven't we, Allison?
Mike, I think that is the most popular line, whether you've heard it at the convention or people just repeating it at home. That seems to be the catchphrase of the week. I know we'll also hear from Barack Obama tonight. Anything leaking out there? Any details on his speech?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting, of course. Think about the fact that he served, obviously, 8 years as president with Joe Biden at his side. They had weekly private lunches, just the two of them. They had countless meetings every day in the West Wing, in the Situation Room. So there's no one better who could talk about what Joe Biden would bring to the office of president than the man who chose him as his vice president, Barack Obama. Interesting, as we just got some excerpts as well of what he's going to say tonight, is that he has spent time in the Oval Office with both men, with Joe Biden, of course, but also with Donald Trump. Remember those meetings that he had with him as president-elect during the transition. And he'll say, I never expected my successor to continue my policies, but I did hope and expect for the sake of the country that he would take the responsibility seriously. Unfortunately, as Obama will put it, he sees this office as nothing more than a reality show to help curry himself and his allies' favor. And of course, the locations of some of these addresses is so interesting. Obama choosing to deliver his remarks tonight in the city of Philadelphia at the Museum of the American Revolution. He is doing that, I'd say, because he wants to underscore the point that really the very core of this American democracy is at stake in this election. He'll point to the founding documents, the Constitution, the Declaration, the values enshrined in those documents as being at risk if Donald Trump is elected to 4 more years, Allison.
A lot to look forward to tonight, Mike. I know people always like to hear from Barack Obama. He's quite a speaker. And as we've been saying, Kamala Harris about to make history. A big night. Thank you so much for that exclusive interview. It was great.
Thank you, Allison. Appreciate that.
Californians elected Kamala Harris to the Senate in 2016. So what do they think of her? Here are some voters from Harris's hometown of Oakland on her career and the Biden-Harris ticket.
I have followed her career, I've followed her sister Mia's career, and I've followed Tony, her brother-in-law's career over the years, and all of them have been great public servants, either in the philanthropic community or in the legal community or in service to this country. I think she has all of the abilities to step in if she needed to be president, and that's one of the thoughts that you have to have when you have a vice president. I think that she has demonstrated herself to be able to think through things as she's represented us as a senator.
I personally am not a fan of Kamala Harris, especially her reputation as a prosecutor. Just the way how many black and brown people she's put away in her tenure as a district attorney for San Francisco, especially when she was running for the nomination as president for the Democratic Party. I thought it was a little alarming how she was flip-flopping, especially when it came to the topic of marijuana usage. How many people did she put away? And she has a general inauthenticity about herself that I think a lot of people can see through.
When it comes to alternatives for incarceration, and when it comes to mass incarceration that has a disparate impact on communities of color, it's important for folks to understand that Senator Harris, when she was district attorney in San Francisco, was very progressive. Whether or not that harms her is another story.
You know, initially when she was running for senator for California, I thought it was amazing that a Black woman, Indian woman, child of immigrant, was able to get into one of the highest seats in California. But when I started looking into her reputation, she has a little bit of a murky reputation as it relates to how she was able to accelerate in her career.
I think that it's an incredible accomplishment, being the first woman of color on a major ticket. And so I feel very happy for her. And I just hope that at the end of the day, people know the story of Kamala Harris as district attorney more than what has been said before.
Hillary Clinton back on the DNC stage tonight, this time throwing her support behind Joe Biden. NBC News national political correspondent Steve Kornacki compares their two presidential campaigns.
All right, so Biden leads nationally. He leads in our poll by almost 10 points. Remember, in 2016, Hillary Clinton actually won the popular vote. She won that by about 2 points. Lost the Electoral College, of course. She won the popular vote by 2. And in our poll now, Biden leads by 9. And in a lot of polls, he's leading high single digits, close to 10 points. So what's different from where Hillary Clinton finished on Election Day 2016 to where Joe Biden's running right now in the polls? Where has he made gains that she wasn't able to? So let's take a look here. First, 3 big groups: Black voters, Hispanic voters, white voters. 2016, Hillary Clinton on Election Day, this is how it looked. She won the Black vote by 81 points. Big margin here among Hispanics, nearly 40 points, although her campaign wanted a higher margin than it got right there. Hopefully wanted that over 40, I think, in their view. And among white voters, that was the biggest group size-wise, and Trump got a 20-point margin right there. That is basically what carried him. So that was 2016. What's changed? Among Black voters, our newest poll, well, pretty flat. Actually, Biden a point off where Clinton was in 2016. Not a gain there. Hispanic voters, Biden actually short of that margin that Hillary Clinton ran up in 2016, 38-26. This, though, we say white voters, the biggest single group, nearly 70% of the electorate is white. It went from Trump 20 in our poll to Trump by 7, more than cut in half in a very big group size-wise. And among white voters, we always talk about 2 different groups there going in very different directions politically. White voters with a college degree, white voters without a college degree. 2016, this is what we mean by different directions. Trump won non-college whites by nearly 40. Our exit poll actually had him winning the white college-educated vote by 3. Look at this, though. Our newest poll, from +3 for Trump to +23 for Biden. If Biden finishes with white college-educated voters anywhere near a margin like that, that would be historic for a Democrat, frankly. And among non-college whites, Trump still leads big, but not quite as big, 24-37. So that adds up to a very big shift among white voters, the biggest single group there when you look at it by racial group. There's also this change. Voters 65-plus senior citizens, they tend to vote in very big numbers. 2016, they were a source of strength for Trump. He won them by 7. In our newest poll, that went completely. Let's try to get that one back up here. Oh, boy. I got to press a lot of buttons to get there. In our latest poll, it is Biden +7. So there you go.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.